welcome to another session of Real Talk. Today I am here with my husband Jason, and and we're going to continue our conversation about parenting. Last week we had Joshua, but this week it's just the two of us.
The two of us.
Oh dear.
Remember that song? Who remembers that song?
I remember that song. Okay. So we had some we watched the podcast and realized that at the end of the podcast, like Joshua said something about picking up pine cones, and we kind of just all said the word pine cones and never clarified it. So we need to tell you what pine cones meant. It's not like an inside joke in our family. It's actually the fact that our house in Georgia, we had about 17
pine trees.
Okay, I was way off. 17 tall Georgia pine trees on our property with pine cones that were like a couple inches all the way up to about 6 inches long. And the kids would hate it when Jason would say, guess what today is? And everybody knew it was pine cone day. And they would spend all day outside cleaning up hundreds of pine cones.
Hundreds and thousands of them. And so glad that I have kids. I swear that's why God gave me kids in Georgia, is to pick up pine cones.
And they would hide them. And anyways.
So I know we don't have that issue here. We have like a little bit of leaves. But
if there's one chore that every kid hates, that was theirs.
That was theirs, for sure. So that's clarifying pine cones. Now that we got that out of the way, welcome back, everyone. Yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I know Shelly and I enjoyed our time together with Joshua. And he really, really loved it. He loved being on this podcast. I said, dude, you should do this more often, man. He goes, I don't know what to talk about. I said, you'll be good. So, but we had a great time. So we've got some things that we just want to share with you. I know that there is all kinds of, how should I say, different ways of parenting. And simply because all of us as parents are different and all of our kids are different. And I think over the years, as we've seen our kids mature, I know that the techniques that we used may not work with every kid, but there's the heart behind it, and there's the philosophy behind it, and most importantly, there's the biblical concept behind it. And that's kind of where we want to go today. We want to kind of get behind all of that stuff. Well, what did you do that works? It may work for me. It may work for Shelly. It actually may work for me, but doesn't work for Shelly. When we were parenting, there were things that she did that I tried to do, and I'm like, I can't do that because that's just not me. It doesn't come out right, and vice versa. So,
rather than a 12-week class that we probably could teach, so this is kind of our synopsis version.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I see that Shelly and I didn't have to deal with is the issue of fatherlessness. And I know that there are a lot of single moms, a lot of single dads too, but mostly single moms out there, and a lot of their ex-husbands or ex-boyfriends or whatever just aren't in the picture. And if they are, it's not in the most ideal sense. And so if this is you, I believe that these different ways of parenting can definitely help you. Single parents have always been a soft spot in my heart. Just because being a youth pastor for 22 years, got to minister to a lot of kids that just their parents weren't together, divorced, or dad is just off doing whatever he wants to do. So I've been able to speak to a lot of fatherlessness over the years, and so I want to include you in that because I think that's important that we make sure that we're including single parents in here. I know that Shelly and I absolutely have had an opportunity to parent together. And it is, let me just tell you, it is a lot easier when there's two people. Can you imagine doing this thing by yourself?
No. I mean, there were times when you were gone or something and I couldn't wait for you to come home because...
Gone working, not gone.
No, let's gone. Like on trips or
Let's clarify that with this woman here. I'm just kidding.
No, that didn't happen. But just where he was traveling or something, and I had to pick up the slack of both parents. And so it really, and I had a lot of friends who are single parents. And so I really have a lot of empathy and a lot of compassion for them.
Yeah, I think that's important. So those of you that don't have a father, or maybe you grew up with a father and you're trying to parent, and what do I do? I believe that Father will give you grace. Holy Spirit will begin to speak to you and what to do and what not to say. But I would also encourage every parent, not only just single parents, but every parent, go talk to people. How are you doing this? How is parenting? How do you do parenting? How are you a good mother? How are you a good father? Go up to people and ask them how they were successful. Ask them the hard question: how are you not successful? Yeah. You know, and I think we need to learn from one another. So, one thing that I said last week too that I wanted to touch on really quick, and we're going to kind of talk on this a little bit, is the whole idea of lazy parenting versus active parenting, and what that looks like. And I think that kind of brought out some questions. I know that somebody asked me about that. What does that look like? And I think one of the things that we tend to get lazy, well, first of all, we get lazy just by not being around. We end up working too much, or we get caught up in a hobby at the house, maybe working on cars. I know that I was talking to somebody a couple weeks ago, and they've got a problem drinking. And so they get into the drinking aspect of it. And so I would encourage y'all, your number two, besides God, and besides your wife, your number two, so number three, I guess, your number three priority really needs to be your kids. But your number two priority needs to be your wife, and obviously all of you serve God together as your number one priority. And so the idea of lazy versus active parenting, I think that that's important that we really kind of touch on that a little bit. And we're going to be kind of explaining that a little bit in our communication and what we do with our children, what discipline looks like. And speaking about discipline, I think that it's important that we begin to understand why we discipline. The Bible says that God disciplines those whom he loves. The Father disciplines those whom he loves. So I know that for me, I hated disciplining my kids. I would even say that, man, I don't want to spank you. I don't. Spanking was allowed where we lived. Spanking allowed here?
I don't know. Our kids were all grown up when we moved here.
Yeah, so you need to follow the law of the land, whatever your spanking looks like, that sort of thing. But we spanked, and we did not do it out of anger. We did it out of a disciplined heart ourselves, and not just haul off and just wail on our kids. Were we angry at times?
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah. I think there was something I learned way back, like in the beginning, and I got some information from somewhere about disciplining anger versus love, and how, there's a difference between going, when you're really angry, just taking a step back and making sure that you're not angry, or even if there is spanking, which, like he said, it was allowed in Georgia, but never doing that in anger and never doing it excessively, because then it can border on abuse. And so there's a balance in not only how we do it, I think, but also where our brain is at, where our emotions are at in the moment.
And with what we do it with, we didn't do it with our hand. We did it. We had a wonderful spoon. You can ask any of my three kids, and they'll tell you about the wooden spoon. But
yeah, because in Georgia, I think we had to use an object.
Yeah, we never did it with our hand either, because that was this is love. This is love. And so I think there's different philosophies behind that, whether you agree with that or not. Either way, that's okay. But your whole idea is that how are you disciplining, and where is it from? Are you disciplining from your heart, or are you disciplining out of reaction? And I think that that's really important, that we understand, how are we disciplining? How did we discipline, Shelley? Mm-hmm. Did we discipline out of a response to the issue, which is a lot more godly, or were we reacting because we were trying to take it personally? And I think that it's important. Yes, you do get angry because you want your kid to do right, but in order for them to do right, though, you've got to show them how to do right. And it takes a long time to do that. And we need to understand that they're not in their 30s.
Right.
And they're not going to do exactly what you do. They're learning. They're 4, 5, 10 years old, 15 years old.
Right.
So I think it comes from, where does your heart come from? And where's your heart in this parenting thing? Are you at your wit's end? If you're at your wit's end, then you need to go talk to somebody so that you're not at your wit's end anymore.
Yeah.
So
yeah, counseling is always something, and getting advice from people who did it the right way. Over the years, we had a lot of parents come to us and ask us because they're like, your kids behave well. Well, if your kids are not behaving well, find somebody who you see that's doing it right, and feel free to ask questions. Feel free to get counseling. It's not a bad thing for anybody. Also, we touched on this last week. We talked about how our goal was not to raise pastors' kids, but Christians. But also in our disciplining, our goal wasn't just to get them to behave. Yeah. Because we think about that in the moment. Like when our kids are not behaving, I just want my kid to behave. I just want them to behave. And I hear parents say that. Yeah. Like in the restaurant, why is my kid not sitting still? Or when they're at church and they're running around. So in the moment, you just want them to behave. But if you can think of the long-term goal of not just behaving, but what's your goal? Like, do you want them to be able to leave the house someday and be godly people? Do you want them to be godly teenagers? Do you want them to be godly kids in their schools and with their friends? Well, if you want that, then you have to go. It has to be more than just, I want my kid to behave in this moment.
Yeah, the ultimate goal for us wasn't to raise good kids. That was the goal in the moment, but the ultimate goal, the final outcome, I know that her and I would always say, man, I can't wait till our kids grow up and they're serving God. That is our ultimate goal, is to raise godly adults. That's our goal. And so far, all three of them, man, they're doing an awesome job.
Yeah, definitely they are. One thing is, we talked a little bit about this too, like punishment versus discipline, and how like punishment, it's like that, what we were saying before about anger versus love. And punishment just sounds so harsh, but when you discipline your kid, it's more than just, oh, you did something wrong. It's more like, hey, let's sit down and have a conversation about why you did this, or like, why did you just hit your sister upside the head?
Not that any of your kids have done that.
And if it was, well, they hit me first. Well, you had a choice to not hit them back, or, whatever the situation is, there's always conversation that needs to go with discipline, because otherwise you're just disciplining them. And then sometimes your kids have no idea why or what behavior they should have instead. And also one thing we did with our kids is we gave them more than one opportunity to get it the right way.
Yes, absolutely.
So the example that we thought of, I think when we were talking about this, is the rule in our house was you couldn't slam doors especially when you were angry. Like you couldn't just go through the house and boom, slam the door behind you and go into your room. Okay, if you needed to go in your room, but slamming door was not okay. So we'd give them opportunity. If you slam your door again, you're going to lose your door. So Joshua, I think, tried it more than one time.
Michaela.
Was it Michaela?
Michaela.
Okay, Joshua did other things. This was Michaela.
I want to insert this really quick.
Yeah.
One of the things that I saw growing up was a lot of girls that were super bratty, and they were daddy's little girl, and they can get whatever they wanted. I wanted my daughter to be daddy's girl, but not at the expense of her doing whatever she wanted to get those things. Mm-hmm. And so my rule was that I am not going to raise a bratty daughter. I'm just not. She's going to be respectful. She's going to be loving. She's going to be sweet. She turned out pretty sweet. I'm kidding, Michaela. But I think for us, when I heard her slam her door, I told her, I said, listen, when you do that, the next time that happens, it's going to be off the hinge. And here's the reason why. Well, she did it. And then I went out and got my DeWalt drill and I took off her door hinges, and she asked me what I was doing. And I said, you just slammed your door, right? She goes, yeah. I said, you remember? And she goes, no. I said, well, the part of the issue is that when we do that, you're displaying anger that we don't want you to do. And so that was the idea. So
yeah, I don't think she ever did that one again.
Nope.
So anyways.
So I think in that, so that's a really good one, Shelley. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No,
but that's a really good one. You said she never did it again. And it's simply because she understood why she shouldn't get angry.
Yeah, because the conversation was, you're angry. You slammed your door. This is why we don't want you to slam the door. You slam it again. This is the consequence. She slammed it again. There was a consequence. Had the conversation of why the door was off the hinges, and we never had the problem again. Now, that doesn't mean it's always corrected right away, but at least,
In that instance, it was.
In that instance, it was. So another thing, I think we were going to talk about a little bit later, but consistency in parenting is huge, because what if we didn't follow through with that? What if she kept doing that? We consistently have to, change that behavior. So
I think one of the things that really encouraged us, honey, is the idea that we just didn't punish. If we did something wrong, you were grounded, or you had this taken away, or you had that taken away, or you got in trouble for this. I think the idea of punishment versus discipline as the first thing, I think there's a difference because discipline takes time to disciple, and you're discipling your child. Whereas punishment is just, well, you did something wrong, and now that you went 80 miles an hour in a 55 zone, you've got to pay this $400 ticket.
Right.
That's punishment. But we're not called to do that with our children. We're not cops. We're not police officers. We're not, correctional officers. We're mom and dad.
Right.
And we need to provide that discipleship. We can't expect the church to do all the discipleship in our small groups or our growth groups or church services or friendships or community within our church. That needs to be done. And we can't tell our kid, well, I'm going to take you to our youth pastor, Pastor Anthony. He's going to fix you. We need to disciple our kids. And I think one of the things that really encouraged us is that I've got to look ahead. Is this punishment, first of all, is this punishment going to fit the crime? Number one. But number two, why is he or she doing this?
Right.
I want to get at the root of the issue
and
find out why Joshua was doing this. Why is Joshua doing this? Or why is Elijah repeatedly getting up out of his bed when he's told to go to sleep at night?
Right.
So we got to find that out. Why is that?
Right.
And so we got to understand that. And I think part of the discipleship, the discipline part of it, is also us learning our kids and getting to know our kids. That's the other thing about active versus lazy parenting. We just choose not to get to know our kids sometimes.
Right.
And we got to get to know our kids.
They all have different personalities. Yeah. Like we've studied the Enneagram a lot. And so we've learned a lot. Gosh, I wish we knew it when our kids were little, because our kids were all different personalities. I couldn't treat Joshua and Michaela and Elijah exactly the same and have the same punishments for all three. It wouldn't have worked out that way at all. And, I was thinking about this. The light bulb doesn't always go off the first time. Think about it. If you're a chismosa or a gossip, it doesn't necessarily mean that once you gossip, you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I'll get it right the next time. And the light bulb goes off and you're immediately not that thing. Even if somebody calls you out on it and says, hey, you're doing this behavior that we don't like, the light bulb doesn't necessarily go off immediately with your children either. They don't immediately line up and fix it immediately. There's steps that we have to take. There's that consistency. And if it's not working, then try something different. But I think in communication as parents, that was one thing we were constantly talking to each other, constantly about how we can change this. Okay, we tried this with Elijah for 3 months. It hasn't worked. Well, maybe we need to try something different with Elijah to try to get this light bulb to go off in his head about whatever it was.
I think, too, we can try all this stuff, but we need to be praying. We need to be praying over our kids. We need to be interceding over our kids. We need to be speaking the word of God over our kids. We need to be getting them in Sunday school, children's church. We need to be getting them in student ministry. We need to be doing all of that, because that just reinforces who you are.
Yeah.
And we need to be declaring over our kids. Mm-hmm. What are you declaring over your kids? Are you declaring potential negativity and potential curse? Or are you declaring, be awesome, be amazing today?
Yeah.
You go out there today and you be the best you that you can be. And if you mess up, as John Maxwell always used to say, fail forward.
Right.
If you're going to fail, but fail forward. Do something that's okay. And I always just tell my kids, you can make mistakes all day long, but don't make the big mistakes. Don't make the big mistakes. And each one of us has our own definition of big mistakes, but mine were that they just don't go out, drink, don't get drunk and drive, and don't get a girl pregnant, don't get pregnant, and all of those things. But I never had to worry about that. I think I told Joshua and Michaela that once. I think I may have told Elijah once. But my thing is that don't make the big mistakes, but you won't make the big mistakes if you let the small mistakes become smaller and smaller and smaller.
Well, if you're learning from them, like
Yes.
if you're learning from your small mistakes,
Absolutely.
you're never going to make the big ones because you're becoming godlier and godlier and godlier.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole goal.
Oh my gosh, there's so much we could talk about.
I know. And I was thought of the
And
verse.
that's so good too, because we want to become, we're trying to make our kids godly, but we need to be godly ourselves. We can't expect our kids to be godly if we're not godly. We can't expect our kids to not curse if we're walking around the house cursing under our breath, or we're complaining about our boss, or, we can't expect that. It's just not going to happen. Anyways, I'll stop. Go
No,
ahead.
it's okay. You're fine. Well, I was thinking of the verse because you touched on blessing and curses of our children. And one thing that's really been big is words. And then the Bible says in Proverbs 18:21, I wrote down where in Proverbs because I can't remember verses to save my life, but that life and death is in the power of the tongue. And it's true, like what we say to our kids, like if we're always telling our kids they're stupid, well, why didn't you get an A? Well, that's because you're just stupid. Like, or you're going to be just like your dad, and your dad's a hot mess, or whatever it is, or, whatever it is. I can't think of another example at the moment, but what we say is so important. So Jason said, every morning I drop the kids off at school, I'd say, be amazing. So be the best you can be and be a blessing to others instead of like just putting them down when they were walking out the door, like give them something positive instead of something negative. So it's the whole thing. And if you read the Bible, it's loaded with blessings and curses, right? That we do to ourselves. And if we want God's promises in our life, we have to walk in blessings and not the curses.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
So you were talking about another thing about parenting, like we said, meaning well and doing well are two completely different things.
Yeah. I want to go back to something before I get into that. So I know it seems like a rabbit trail, but I skipped over something that I didn't mean to skip over it. But I think this is really important that we address this. Since being in youth ministry, I got into youth ministry in 1993, and I left youth ministry in 2017. And one of the things that I saw over that time, and we touched on it last week with Joshua, was the whole idea of social skills and manners. I really want to encourage every parent out there to really rediscover politeness and manners. I think that's a lost art in our world, and I know that sounds a little old-fashioned to even maybe some of the younger ones that are listening, but I know that if you're listening, you aren't going to think that it's probably old-fashioned. You're probably going to think that it's good. We always taught our kids to say please and thank you. It's okay to train your kids to say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, instead of yeah. Or when someone addresses your kid and they say hi to them, or they just keep on walking, address that. And I think that's important that we have those social skills. It's okay to actively train your kid when they walk into a room to say hello without being awkward, and teach them how to address everybody in the room. Or if there is an older person that walks into the room, train your child to get up off the seat so that they can have a seat to sit on, and you have your kid sit on the floor. Yeah. That was something that I had to do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If I didn't, my mother would be, right, Mom? You'd be all over me. But that was important, and I'm so glad that Mom taught me those things, because I needed to have manners. Yeah. I would open the door for girls or for ladies. Is there anything wrong with that anymore? Apparently there could be, but I still do it. And every single time I get a thank you. Yeah. Well, most times I get a thank you. I'm getting less and less thank yous, but it's the idea of just being mannerly, polite. When I used to tell my kids, when you go over somebody's house, don't make a pest of yourself. Don't, try to ask for too many things. A drink of water, that's good. But, if they offer you a dinner, that's cool. That's really nice of them. But don't assume that you're going to.
Yeah. So. And also just participate in helping out. Like when you go to people's homes, like participate in helping out. But here's the thing with that too, Jason, is I know that in the moment, I mean, we just talked about punishment and discipline. Like if your child doesn't say something proper in the moment, it's not okay to just yell at them in front of other people.
No.
And that's something that we see is like if it's embarrassing. Yeah. Like if my 5-year-old doesn't say hi to Mrs. Sue when when she addresses them, I'm not going to be all over them in the moment, because that's embarrassing to your child. But when you get home, have the conversation of, we talked about manners. Now we were talking to Miss Sue and you were supposed to say what, and like have those conversations, like teach them manners, but not in the moment where you're going to punish them.
A couple of weeks ago in church, I said hi to a little kid and they were walking with their mom and he didn't say anything. The little kid didn't say anything. So mom said, hey, listen, it would be a good idea if you said hello to Pastor Jason. He really likes you.
Yeah.
And then they said hi. And I said, hey, nice to hear your voice. And we talked. So that was really cool, teaching those social skills even in the moment, but in a way that's positive, not degrading, not dehumanizing, not undignified. Talk to them. You should talk to them. Well, don't ever do that again in front of me. You embarrassed me. It really has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them.
Yeah, because remember, we're trying to raise godly, amazing people. And we can't raise godly, amazing people if we're always putting them down. So
let me kind of get off that rabbit trail and go back to this original one. You had talked about meaning well and doing well are two completely different things. One thing that I made a mistake too when I was first becoming a parent. Remember this, Shelley? Our first one was Joshua, and Joshua's such an awesome person. God bless him. God bless your firstborn. Let's put it that way. God bless your firstborn. I feel like
usually the last one too, because they sometimes get the lazy parent.
Yeah, maybe. And so I think one of the things for us was, or for me, was I had to relearn some things that I thought I was doing right, but I didn't.
Yeah.
A famous phrase that I said to Joshua, probably 25 too many times, was the word, Joshua, think. Think, Joshua. When he would do something wrong, I would tell him to think. While I was well-meaning in saying that, it came across as being rough. It came across as being insensitive. It came across as being domineering. It came across as being reactive instead of responsive. It came across as being, well, Dad's just frustrated at me, so I don't know what to think. So I'm just going to freeze up.
Yeah.
Exactly. What do your words sound like? Instead of, now, I did want him to think, but the best way that I should have done that was, Joshua, let's think about this for a second. What would have been a better, more positive way to be able to do this, or to say that, or to not do that? Instead of me reacting in a moment, think, Joshua. Like, what do your words sound like? What does your tone sound like?
Yeah.
What does your facial expression sound like? What's your body expression? Where do your feet point? Are you being bothered because you have to actually be active parents?
Be a parent.
I mean, that's what I was thinking. Wait, I'm being bothered right now. Like, this kid is bothering me. I got to stop doing that. That's my kid. That's my son. That's my firstborn son. Like, I'm being bothered by that. I'm being distracted because I want to go work on the lawn, or I want to go work on my car, or I want to watch the Yankee game. I'm being distracted by my son. And so these are things that I had to overcome.
Yeah.
They say that communication is only 7% words. It's 50-some... over 50% body language, and like 40%, 30-some% tone.
Wow.
And I think that little kids pick up on that too.
Oh yeah, definitely. They're not stupid. They know what we're...
Not stupid.
I mean, they watch us. If our kids are watching us all the time, they know when we're happy, sad, frustrated, angry. And so, and that's all of that. Another thing we thought of with the parenting meaning well and doing well was the phrase, and I'm sure 1,000 people have heard their parents or they've said it themselves. This is something that we tried like from the get-go. I remember before we even had children, we said, we're never going to say this.
Why, Mom?
Was because I said so. And like, I think the reason behind this is because it's not a meaning well phrase. It doesn't teach them how to do well. So because I like, okay, we're going to do chore night. Elijah, you're doing the dishes tonight. Michaela, the other night. Joshua, the next night. Why can't we do it this way? Why couldn't? And the immediate reaction of a lot of parents is just because I said so.
Just do it.
And you mean well by doing that. It's because you want them to just behave. But remember, we're not trying to get just behavior. We're trying to get godly children. And so the godly response would have been for me to say, not because I said so, but, well, because this is fair. And explain to them. So doing well would be, okay, because it's equal. We all live in this house, so we're all going to participate in this house. We're all going to take our turns, and it's not just about mom and dad. It's also about all of us. Plus, you're learning skills. You get to learn how to do dishes. So someday when you leave the house, you don't have to just, have dishes all over your house. And I know that that's maybe seems like a lot, but you can phrase it however you like, because, some people use more words and less words. That doesn't matter, but use words to explain something, not just because I said so. Yeah. Because I said so doesn't cut it. It doesn't tell your kids anything. There's no depth to that. It's just a answer.
One of the things that I really like about our world now than even when I was growing up as a little kid is we're so much more information oriented, and people nowadays and it starts with even today's kids, they want to know why. I've always termed the millennial generation the why generation, because they simply want to know why. Like, okay, why do you want me to believe in God? Why do you want me to go rake up the leaves now? Why do you want to do this? Most of that, it comes out of a heart of really truly wanting to know information.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Since our kids were younger, they could go and type in google.com and find out the answers.
Yeah.
I mean, we even do that now. It's like we don't even need to call an expert because the expert is right here on your phone. And so I think that's important that we explain to our kids. If they ask why, don't be a lazy parent and just say because I said so, or because that's just the way it is. And if you don't, I'm going to make your bottom red. I think one of the things that we've got to do in proper discipleship is to find out why.
Yeah.
I want to know why I'm required to do something so that I can get a better understanding of why I want to do it. And so I won't have to be punished later on because I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Well, plus, as you grow to adult, like you said, raking leaves. Like, if my parents never told me why they rake the leaves, why would I do it now? Because I don't know the why.
Nope.
Like, it makes your grass, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't even know because I don't know the why.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, does it ruin something? Maybe there's a reason why mom and dad, we don't just most parents don't just make up stuff just to have their kids be their little worker bees. There's reasons.
Sometimes that's nice.
Yeah, sometimes. But there's usually a why behind it so that they know. So when they grow up to be adults, there's things that I don't know as an adult because I don't know the why behind them. That's good that if we teach our kids the why behind things.
Another quick thing I was thinking of was, you know how when we come home, we're so tired from work and all of that stuff. I know that I've done that before. And then we're making our kids do stuff. They're tired as well.
Yeah.
And I think taking some time with them and stepping into their world, remembering back to when we were younger and we were tired at times. Yes, our parents may have done it a little bit differently, or maybe you do it differently than your parents, or you do it differently than your neighbor's parents or your friend's parents. I think what comes down to it is that sometimes we get tired, and that's when the reactions start.
Yeah.
That's when those things start of being lazy and saying, because I said so. There have been times where I've told my kids, for now, I just need you to do it.
Yeah.
And later on, we'll explain it. But right now, I just need you to do it.
Yeah.
Like I remember a couple of times, there have been times I've just told them to do it and they ask why. And I'm just like, right now, I just need you to do it.
Yeah.
Just trust me. I need you to do it.
But you just establish the behavior ahead of time to be able to say that in the moment. So
I want to encourage those of you that are listening that may not be married, and maybe you had kids before you're thinking about getting married. I really want to encourage you to be married. Be equally yoked. If you're looking at a relationship, whether you're a guy or a girl, and you're looking at a relationship that is not equal in your Christianity, in your following after Jesus. I know that Pastor Mark says it all the time, that you want to be with somebody that's running alongside you in your pursuit of Jesus and chasing after Jesus. If they're keeping up with you, then that could be somebody that you could be with. But I really believe that we need to be what the Bible calls equally yoked. I'm not going to get into the definition of what that sounds like. The teacher in me wants to teach that right now, because equally yoked, what is it, like an egg yolk type thing? I mean,
look it up. You're all smart.
Yeah,
Google it.
just go download your Bible app and just read it. But if you're not equally yoked, you really can't require Christian parenting out of your unbelieving spouse. That's really difficult to require.
Yeah.
And so you've got to do your best to parent godly and pray for your spouse to believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
That's a tough one, because we get people that come in and say, I want to be able to do this, but my spouse just isn't doing what your wife would do.
Yeah.
And I get that. That's when we just need to begin to pray for salvation in our household.
Absolutely.
But if you've got kids and you're not married, get married.
Yeah.
Just get married. Come to me. Hang out. We'll have a conversation. We'll do some premarital counseling, maybe even postmaritally, after you get married. But let's just get you married, because there's a blessing in that. There's blessing in being married. Yeah. There's blessing that Shelly and I have. We can just look at each other. Most times, we don't even need to say anything to one another. We just look at each other and we understand each other. We get each other. And I'm not just talking about, in the moment, funny little thing. I'm talking about real life. And I just want to encourage you guys, if you're not married, get married. Are you a godly example yourself to your children? That's one thing it's one of the things that encouraged me to be accountable, to be a godly man, was I'm trying to train up godly men, and I'm trying to show my daughter what a godly man looks like. If I'm not displaying that personally, if I'm not pursuing that, then I can't be an example, and I can't do that. So I know that being accountable to my wife and her accountable to me. I mean, Shelly, how many times did you tell me, Jason, you can't do that? And I have to listen.
Yeah, and that part of that is if we did something wrong, or if you do things wrong as a parent, don't be too big for your britches, as they say in the South, to admit you're wrong. Yep. Admit you've done something wrong to your children. Yep. That's huge. So many parents, and that's pride, which is a sin. So as an adult, you're sinning, and not being humble and going to your children, admitting you're wrong, and saying, hey, I did something, I'm sorry, I just got really angry with you. And
don't give the reasons behind it in the moment. Just apologize and be done with it. You don't have to be defensive with your apology. You might be able to explain later on, but in that moment, just apologize. And what my good friend John used to tell us, restore fellowship with your child.
Yeah. And don't
restore fellowship. Make sure that you guys are good. Make sure you're talking. Make sure you're everything, the air is cleared. That's what I mean by restore fellowship. But you've got to make sure that you're asking forgiveness from your child, but you're not justifying what you did wrong. Because if you start justifying what you did wrong, they're going to do the same thing to you.
Right. That's what I meant, I think, by admitting you're wrong. Yep. Means just admitting you're wrong, saying I'm sorry. And you may get an apology back and you may not. But think about it in life. We can forgive others and not always expect a forgiveness back. And that is huge too, because forgiveness, it's our job to apologize. It's not our job to receive an apology back.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Which was another thing that was big, and at least for me with my kids was, I always wanted to teach them how to apologize, but I didn't like the whole thing of
say you're sorry.
Say you're sorry. Joshua hit me. Well, Joshua would say you're sorry. Well, that's great, and he should, but are you sorry for what you did to your sister? No.
So why are you saying I'm sorry?
Okay, so then why are you saying you're sorry? So why aren't you sorry for hitting your sister?
These were serious. These were real conversations we had in our home.
Well, she kept pushing my buttons, and so I hit her. Okay. bring Michaela back in the conversation. So, Michaela, what are you button pushing for?
Yeah, first
she was good at pushing buttons.
Oh,
so
she was great.
So the conversation had to be a whole conversation.
Which, by the way, Joshua only hit his sister once.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not saying that he went around hitting his sister. That's certainly not the case. I just, for example.
I was trying to raise gentlemen.
Yes. So, lost train of thought.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Bringing Michaela back in his conversations about pushing buttons. Why were you pushing buttons, Michaela?
So we can't expect our kids to understand forgiveness if they don't understand what they did wrong or they're not sorry for what they did wrong.
Yep.
So there needs to be a conversation of why what you did wrong was wrong. Are you sorry? Okay. And then there was the conversation. If they're still not, well, I need you to think about it. Meanwhile, if Joshua said, yeah, I shouldn't have hit Michaela. I'm so sorry, Michaela. But Michaela's like, I'm not really sure if I'm sorry yet for pushing your buttons, Joshua. Okay, well, I need you to think about this and we're going to have a conversation later. And we would, because I'm not going to make her apologize in the moment if she didn't know, if she really didn't understand why she was apologizing. I wanted my kids to always understand what their behavior meant and not just to have a reaction of, don't just say you're sorry because you're sorry, or don't just say blah, blah, say something because I asked you to say that or I wanted you to, because that's not what forgiveness looks like. Forgiveness for us has to be us owning what we did wrong.
Yep.
And asking for forgiveness for what we did wrong. Well, they can't ever own it if we don't teach them what owning it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even these conversations that you're having with your kids, there could be in a moment where you have to go someplace. Take a kid to practice. You're supposed to be somewhere at 1:00, and this conversation is happening at 12:55, and you're trying to hurry up. I would encourage you to have that conversation, because what's more important, a baseball practice, a dance recital, or your kid growing up to be a godly person? Mm-hmm. There were many times where I remember us being late for stuff, but it's because we were disciplining our kids.
Yeah.
We were trying to explain in the moment.
Yeah.
Were there times when we hurried up around out of the house? Yeah. I was late for church. Yeah. But you know what? What was most important to me was my own household before I was trying to take care of somebody else's household.
Right.
Before I was trying to entertain another parent in baseball. So I just throw that in there.
Yeah. So anyway, conversations with your kids are so important. Another thing we thought of was, do we look at the poor examples around us and become like them, or do we think differently? Do we do things different from our parents? So we hear a lot of times parents say, I don't know why I did that. It's because that's what I saw modeled in my home.
Yes.
Or my grandma who raised me, or, well, this person over here does it that way. And just because we say something doesn't mean it necessarily will work in your home. Even like what we just gave you an example. That doesn't mean that's how you teach your children forgiveness, but figure out a way that works in your home. So it's the whole thing of not just because you saw something modeled doesn't make it the right
That's
way.
right. Absolutely.
It doesn't make it... you could have some really poor examples for parents and you're just repeating that behavior over and over again and wondering why your kids are acting the way they act, or because you don't know how to change something. So you repeat those patterns over and over. So I would encourage you to have conversations with people who who are good. Again, we're good parents, and like you can come talk to us or other people, because that's how we learn parenting. It's by having conversations with people. Like, pick another family in your church and start hanging out with them and see how they act around their kids. I feel like there's sometimes when we just, have had people hang out with us, or we hung out with them just because, wow, I see how they treat their kids. I want to learn how to do it that way.
Yeah.
I don't want to learn how to do it the way my parents did it. I don't want to learn how to do it the way they do it over there, because I don't like that over there. But it's cool because you can influence each other in godly ways, because parenting is not cut or dry, but at the same time, it's got to be done godly.
I think in all of this, I'd like to encourage all of you, especially when you begin to have teenagers, listen, learn from them.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from my teenagers. Granted, I had a little bit of a push into teenage years, if you will, those years, because I was a youth pastor, so I understood teenagers a little bit better than most, because that was part of what I prided myself on, was trying to understand teenagers. But try to understand them. Sit down and spend time with them. Go into their rooms, talk to them. Have conversations with them. It's one thing I remember growing up with my mom. Mom and I had really great conversations, and I remember those times. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciated those times, because I know that even though there were things that were happening in our home that weren't the best, I know that Mom and I having our conversations, having mother and son talks, really helped me with different things. And to be honest with you, Shelly and I had fun parenting. We just had a lot of fun with our kids. Yeah. We were joking. We'd do stuff, and I know many of you do, because some of you post things on Facebook that's like, it's hilarious what you guys do in your homes.
You remind us of us when we
were so kids. Just have fun. It's not all work, but I'm going to tell you what, it's hard work.
Yeah.
It's hard work, and devote yourself to that, because the payment is amazing.
Yeah.
And so listen and learn from one another. Listen and learn from your kid. It's okay to learn from them. Yeah. You're raising smart children, aren't you?
Yeah.
Isn't your kid smart? Sometimes they're smarter than you. I get it. I don't know everything, and I need to have Elijah tell me what's up. I need to have Michaela tell me what's up. I need to let Joshua tell me how things are. Dad, blah, blah, blah. Like we said last week, take your kid for an ice cream. Take your kid for a coffee. Have conversation with them. How can I improve as a parent? Bro, let me tell you what, that'll just light up their light bulb like you wouldn't believe. That would be absolutely wonderful. So we had fun parenting. We really did. I couldn't wait for the teenage years. I'm having fun now.
Can I interrupt for one second? Please. Although middle school, I have to say, are the hardest years you will go through. But again, if you said, as we said, like if you put the work in,
yes,
you'll get the result. But I'll be honest with you, middle school years work a little rough for
it's
our
hard.
Kids.
It's hard.
But that doesn't mean they didn't turn. But my kids, we've seen my kids now, and we put the work in.
Yep. Well, we love you guys. This was a great conversation. I know there was a lot of things there. Go back and re-listen or take some notes. I know that we definitely didn't do everything right. You can ask my kids, but I guarantee they'll qualify it with, but Dad and Mom were awesome, Mom and Dad. So I also want to say thank you to my parents as well for raising me. And I know that there have been times where I know Mom kind of looks down on our parenting, and Dad and I, before he had a stroke, we had talked about parenting. But I want to tell you what, if it wasn't for my two parents, I would not be who I am today. Obviously, Father God is awesome too, and all of that. And I know that you could say the same about your parents.
I could have to echo that, because I'm thankful that from the beginning I knew who Jesus was because of my parents. And they made mistakes, but who doesn't as a parent? Yeah. But I'm so thankful that no matter what, I could always talk to them, and no matter what, they took me to Jesus from the very day I was born. And because of that, I had a whole different childhood and teenage years and adulthood.
I mean, my mom drugged me up to the altar. I had no idea where I was going when I was 14 years old. And I ended up getting saved that day and not wondering what the heck just going on. But man, I tell you what, if it wasn't for that act of parenting in that moment, I wouldn't be sitting here in this chair. So thank you, Mom and Dad. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Love you.
My mom and dad too.
Anyways, that's it. We're going to end there. Next week, we'll be back. We hope you've enjoyed it, all of this. I'm a little emotional right now, but if you guys need anything, please don't hesitate to call us. Let us know how we can help you. I may not have all the answers. We may not have all the answers, but I think that if we open up the good book and read the Bible, we can probably gain some really awesome understanding out of the fruit of the Spirit and all of that stuff. So we love you. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week.
Bye.